welcome to another Wargame Red Dragon tutorial video with me, Bubblebox, and today we're looking at the individual command units in the decks. Now there's 6 basic types of commands in Wargame Red Dragon. You've got Jeeps, Armoured Vehicles, Infantry commands, Tanks, Helicopter commands, and of course Ship commands. Now I've got one up here. This is an Armoured Command, and you can have a look in the decks as to what they look like. This guy looks pretty cool. It's got a little machine gun up the top there. You can see it's a little bit armoured and it's a wheeled vehicle. Now when choosing your land commands, you should pay special attention, in my opinion, to certain unit statistics, and these are certainly the armour of the vehicle. The speed of the vehicle is important, so you need to be able to get away from certain situations such as artillery fire. Perhaps you notice a plane coming in and you need to move your unit quite quickly, and it's going to need the off-road, especially the off-road speed, to be able to do this. Is it amphibious or not? Do you want to take it across rivers or even across the sea? Its strength's quite important. If it's got a higher strength, it might be able to take more. It will be able to take more punishment than one with a lower strength. Also, you need to consider things like the stealth. Is it easily seen by the enemy? Of course, you will be hiding these probably in forests and in buildings anyway. And also, its autonomy can be important depending on how big the maps are and how far these things have got to travel. And if you have to get them out of trouble, of course, have they got enough fuel left to move them to a different position? Now, in my opinion, armaments, and this guy here, this Fuchs command vehicle, has got a machine gun. These really should be your last consideration when choosing a command vehicle, and this is because you should not really be engaging the enemy with your commands, unless of course it's a ship command, because these are a bit of a law unto themselves. So if it's a land command, you don't want to be engaging with your enemy with your land command units at all, really. And if you are, you're probably under a lot of pressure in that particular game already. So what about the Jeeps? Well, the Jeeps, first of all, they're very cheap. They cost either 100 or 110 points. The 100-point ones are very basic, and we can have a look at the basic Chinese one up here. The first one you'll see in the decks. Cost 100 points. It's got a decent sort of road speed and an okay sort of off-road speed. Another good thing about the Jeeps is that you get lots of them. So if one dies, you can replace it. Or if you have an excess points perhaps later in a long game, you can even put 2 TVs in one zone as a bit of a safety net. Now each nation has at least one Jeep. And there's some minor differences in the stats between the Jeeps between the nations, and there's also some different model types as well. So there's a nice Mitsubishi one there. The 110 point ones are generally faster off-road and have some other slight differences and slight upgrades on the 100 point Jeeps. For example, if we compare this 110 point Chinese Jeep to the basic 100 point one, then you can see it's got a better off-road speed, 70 k's, as opposed the upgrade's got a better off-road speed of 100 k's compared with the 70 k's of the basic Jeep. And also this one can go amphibious, it can go in rivers and even in the sea as well. So you get a little bit more for your 110 points depending on where you want to go with your CV. Now all the strengths of all the Jeeps is only 5, and none of them have any armour. So that makes them very vulnerable to pretty much any type of enemy fire, especially artillery. And if they're spotted and they get artilleried and you're not able to move them in time, they're pretty much going to die if they get a direct hit or even splash damage from a nearby shell landing, because they haven't got any armour to protect them at all. Now some of the individual ones are quite interesting. The Humvee one is probably the most interesting because it's the only command that has actually got a weapon. If you did want a weapon, it can shoot at ground units, and it can, to a limited degree, it can shoot at hot choppers if they're up close. So I guess if a chopper flew above this in a forest, it would have a chance of shooting that chopper down, I guess. I tend not to use these. got a decent off-road speed as well. There's a couple of the, like I say, the 110 point Red 4 ones, there's a couple of those hanging around. If I can find another one, I can't actually find another one. I think the Chinese might be the only one that has an upgrade of that. We've got the rover commands for the some of the blue 4 sides. We've got these rovers. Again, slightly upgraded off-road speed. These aren't amphibious, of course. So the upsides of Jeep commands are they're plentiful, they're cheap, and they're fast. And the minus sides is that they are very vulnerable to enemy fire. Oh, let's move on and have a look at the Armoured Command vehicles. These tend to come in at a medium kind of price, between 120 and I think 140 points. There is a wide variety of these, and every nation has at least one. Some are amphibious, as is the case for this Russian BMP-1K. And so most of them, or in fact I think all of the armoured vehicles have some kind of light armour. For example, this one you can see it's got 2 front armour and one side back and top armour, but they're still fairly weak units generally, although the strength I believe of all of the armoured commands are 10, so they can take a hit. They can even take an artillery hit and survive, and they can certainly survive while you're getting them out the way most of the time of an artillery barrage, depending on how powerful and how many artillery shells are falling at that particular time. The speed is important as well. This one isn't too fast off-road. It's the off-road speed really, well, on-road speed is important to get them to a position initially, and then the off-road speed is important to get them out of trouble, because you're going to be hiding these guys probably in trees somewhere, and if you see artillery coming in, you're going to want to move them as rapidly as you can out of the way. This one hasn't got that faster off-road speed, although it's pretty average. It's not brilliant, but not too bad either. Whether you go for armaments, again, it's up to you. It's your choice. I tend not to go for heavily armed command vehicles. This one is actually pretty well armed. It's got 4 of these M-Class missiles, which can do some damage to sort of light to medium tanks and other armoured vehicles if they come close, with an AP power of 13. And it can also shoot at other ground units with its main gun as well, with an AP power of 12 and HE power of 2, so it can shoot at infantry and do them some damage as well. Can't shoot at all at helicopters. So, you know, they have got different armaments, and you want to be having a look at that if you do want them to be able to protect themselves. So as I say, I tend not to, because you don't want your commands engaging with the enemy, as I keep on and on and on saying. You can have a look at some of the individual ones. The faster ones I think are the better. The VABs tend to be pretty fast. For example, this VAB PC here, it's got an off-road speed, as you can see, of 90. It's got a little Browning machine gun that can shoot at helicopters if they fly above this command. It's got all-round armour of 1, but the main thing is it's fast and can get away from things. The Fuchs as well is quite a nice one again, very fast off-road. It's got a little machine gun there, 120 points. I quite like that one as well. And I also like the Grizzly. I think is that it's either the, can't remember, it's either the British, here it is, oh, it's the Canadian one, the Canadian Grizzly. Again, look, fast off-road, fast on-road. It's also amphibious, so it can go across the sea. It costs 125 points. It's one of the slightly more expensive ones, and can shoot at ground units and helicopters if it gets absolutely desperate and gets into a battle. The most expensive one, and when this game first, this is actually a new addition to Wargame Red Dragon, the most expensive one is, I believe, the Warrior of the Brits. Here it is. I first saw this and I thought, wow, that looks pretty awesome. It looks nice, it looks cool. It can defend itself with this sort of Radan gun here, which can shoot at ground units and helicopters at quite a good range of 1,575. And it's got 2 front, 2 side armour, some back and top armour. It goes okay off-road and decent on-road as well. But then again, why would you want your command vehicle engaging with the enemy and it's going to cost you 140 points? So I really don't bring these in now. They look really cool. If you want to go for looks, if you're one of those types of player, then you can get these because they look pretty amazing. So the plus sides with the armoured commands are they're still relatively cheap. They have got some armour, so they can take a hit. The minus points is there's less availability. I don't think I mentioned that. So you're not going to get as many of these in your deck as you would something like a Jeep. And so you might get, whereas you might get 6 Jeeps in deck, you probably get 3 or 4 of these guys in your deck if you choose one pack of these. So moving on to the command tanks. Now the command tanks are fully functional tanks that behave as command vehicles. They are though very expensive, and they will therefore draw a lot of enemy fire if they're spotted, especially in points games. They also are low on availability. You might get maybe a couple of these in a pack if you choose to bring these guys in, so you're going to have to be bringing in and probably another type of CV as well as your command tanks, unless you've got a very, very specific kind of deck. Now what are they used for? They have got their uses, and they're best used to take part in a kind of combined assault on an enemy zone, but without being in the front of the battle. So you will want to be putting some other tanks in front of these tanks when you try to wrestle control of a particular zone from your enemy. For example, they can be used to neutralize an important zone, especially in games like conquest games where having control of zones gives you points towards your victory, where in the types of zones where perhaps you can't find the enemy CV, or you can't actually kill the enemy command. Maybe they've got a command tank on there as well, or a heavily armoured or a more armoured command vehicle that you're unable to kill. And you could even manage to sort of neutralise an enemy reinforcement zone using a command tank in this way. Now this category contains the game's most expensive unit, which we'll have a quick look at because everyone goes on about it, and it's this one, the T80 UK. Yeah, it looks a pretty dominant beast. It's the most expensive ground-based unit in the game. It's got some huge weaponry. It's got an AP, main gun's got an AP power of 20 with a pretty decent range, and it's got 3 of these anti-tank missiles, these reflex missiles, with an AP power of 22 and a huge range of 2,800, and it's got a machine gun that can shoot at choppers as well. And it's also got some pretty decent armour, including a top armour of 3 and a back armour of 3 as well, which can protect it against HE artillery shells. It's pretty speedy on road and sort of okay for a tank off-road, not too bad. It is of course a prototype, so you would only get this vehicle when you chose a Russian national deck. Some other interesting ones that people tend to have a look at, I see quite a lot, are the Abrams. Now, I'm not keen on this one because they look at the word Abrams and think, oh, this is a fantastic one, but it's not really. I mean, look at the main gun. It's only got an AP power of 13, so it's only going to be able to defend itself against sort of medium tanks and light armour. If a big tank comes along like a T80 or a T72 or something, then this is going to have problems basically. It's got a couple of machine guns as well, which you can shoot at choppers with and stuff like that. It's got okay armour. Again, it's got a nice 3 back and top armour to protect itself from artillery and such like. Now the Blue Force sort of equivalent to the T80U, I suppose, is the Leopard 2 command tank. This is very powerful. The gun isn't amazingly powerful, but it's good. It's got an AP power of 16 and a good range. But the armour is pretty decent. Again, it's got a back armour of 4 this time, and a top armour of 3 and a front armour of 15. So that's a pretty meaty beast as well. Another one just to have a quick look at is the French AMX 30 BCNE. What a mouthful. And it's got this nice autocannon as part of it, so it can actually shoot at helicopters if it comes under attack from helicopters as well. Of course, you might be slightly out of range. They'll probably slightly outrange you. If you're attacked by a helicopter, it's probably best actually to drive towards the chopper and trying to get this autocannon to shoot down the chopper before the chopper shoots you down, basically. So There's not a lot more to say about command tanks really. They have got uses. The uses aren't great. Again, you don't, just like all the other commands, you don't want to be engaging these in direct conflict with the enemy. You want to be keeping these hidden, but they are useful for capturing zones on the front line. So now moving on to the Command Infantry. Now the Command Infantry are a new addition to the franchise in Wargame Red Dragon. They're very interesting and very versatile. They are my favourite command in the game, and a lot of other people's favourite commands. Loads of people use these commands. Every nation has one, and they all cost 100 points. Unit stats are pretty much the same with all of the units. They're all pretty much exactly the same with very minor differences in their weapon types. They've all got a strength of 5. They're all very small. They've all got medium optics. They've all got the same speed of 20 k's. So bear that in mind. They can't get out of the way of things very quickly. Although they can jump from building to building okay if you're trying to get out of the way of artillery fire. They're all regulars, and they've all got good stealth. So all pretty much exactly the same, so you don't need to go through each individual one having a look. Now they are vulnerable. They've only got a strength of 5. They are lightly armed and easily killed, and should never, as I keep on saying, be put in a position where they are engaging an enemy unit. However, they're also all very small and very stealthy as well, and can hide well in any forest or in any building. And when putting them into a zone, don't immediately think, oh, I've got to put them in a building, especially if there aren't many buildings in that zone. It might be better to put them into a forest somewhere, because the enemy will immediately think, oh, if he's got command infantry, he's going to put them into a building. So just think about that as well when you're placing these units. They've also got a multitude of different uses, these guys. They can be sneaked unseen into enemy zones to neutralize them, or even sneak them in to an enemy zone just as you are about to kill the enemy command, thus getting control of the zone. I mean, perhaps a more advanced move, but really sneaky and really fantastic when it comes on. So now the thing that makes these very versatile is the vehicles that they come in, and vehicle choice is very varied, and what makes these commands so brilliant and so versatile, and why you should definitely have these guys in your decks, in my opinion. They come in all sorts of vehicles. You can get amphibious and non-amphibious ones. Let's have a look. I think the Brits have got an amphibious one. The Stalwart is an amphibious one, so you can even take these guys across rivers and across the sea. They've got unarmoured trucks, they've got armoured vehicles, they've got choppers as well. So the non-armoured trucks are just like you say they are. They're like the Command Jeep CVs. They've all got very low strengths of 5. They're generally, the wheeled ones generally get stuck in the mud a bit if they're off-road, so you want to be keeping them on-road if you want to get, but again, they'll go on-road if you're going to just getting them to a position at the start of the game. They also come, as I said, in armoured vehicles, a whole variety. I'll stick to the Brits because that's what I know most about. So this Saxon's got a little Browning machine gun, and most of these vehicles have got a little bit of armour as well. She's got a 1111. Can be useful, gives you a chance if you're engaged on the way to your sector where you're going to drop off your infantry. Gives you a few seconds of favour, if you like, a time to unload your units while you're getting attacked if you've got just a little bit of armour. And these armoured trucks are also better off-road than their sort of basic truck equivalents. They've got all sorts of armaments, these things. Some of them have got machine guns, which can't do a great deal of damage apart from against infantry. Some of them have actually got anti-tank guns. For example, I think the West German Fuchsmelan here. So this is an infantry command, and the unit, the transport unit is the TPZ Fuchsmelan, which has a Milan F1 ATGM. 3 of those guys. So if at the beginning of the game, if you wanted to bring your command in, drop it off somewhere, and then if you wanted to have a Fuchs Milan to shoot some anti-tank guns, or to hide somewhere in a forest to prevent enemy coming forward, or to shoot at some lightly armoured trucks or something before they unload their infantry, then you've got that to use as well. Some of them have got autocannons. I think the VAB T20, no, not the VAB T20, where is it? Oh yes, the VAB T20, there it is. It's got a nice autocannon, so that can even shoot at helicopters as well. And again, it's got a little bit of armament, and I think the equivalent of that would be the sort of, in the pack side would be a BTR-70, if I can find one. The BTR-70 there, that's got sort of a nice cannon as well that can shoot at helicopters. The choppers are really important on the Wargame Red Dragon. Some of the maps are really big, and you're wanting to get your commands into position early as you can and get to those forward positions. I like the ones with the rocket pods. There are some cheaper ones with machine guns, which are okay, but machine guns, you can't do anything against armoured vehicles with machine guns. You can only do a little bit of damage against infantry, and then only when you're fairly up close. A much better choice, although more points of course, would be for the Brits, rather than getting the AH-1, would be to get the AH-7, because it's got this 68mm rocket pod, and these can do sort of damage against armoured trucks, can stun armoured trucks, and can do a lot of damage against infantry as well, with an HE power of 2. And also, you know, if you wanted a chopper that can do some damage, and these would be useful throughout the whole game, as long as you don't get them shot down, you can drop off your infantry unit, and then you've got a Lynx AH-7 with a rocket pod with a decent range of 2,100 meters that you can use against all sorts of units. I suppose the equivalent on the Red Force side would be the MI8, which is 20 points plus your 100 fatigue command, and that's got also these 57mm rocket pods. So you could, again, with the Red 4, a similar kind of story as for the Lynx choppers on the Blue 4 side. Another Red 4 unit which is really interesting, a chopper again, is the Polish Mi-24D, and you can see this has actually got 3 weapon types: a minigun, a rocket pod, and an ATGM rockets, 4 of those guys as well. So this is pretty much an all-round chopper you can shoot at anything with. And so if you wanted one of these guys, a versatile chopper at the start of the game, drop off your infantry, and then you got this guy you can use at some point during the game if you need it. And it's really fast as well, at 330 kilometers per hour. Also, some of the especially the Red 4 ones are actually more armoured than the Blue 4 ones. So this Mi-24D, you can see, has got a strength of 10, and a lot of the Red 4 choppers tend to be reasonable armoured. I mean, sorry, strength. This one's got a strength of 6, for example, whereas a lot of the Blue 4 ones have less armour. The Lynxes, I think, are they only 4? If I can go back and find the Lynxes again. Yeah, the Lynx AHC, yeah, that's got a strength of 4. So the Lynx, like a lot of the Blue 4 ones, there's a couple of Blue 4 ones slightly better strength, like the Pumas have got a 6. They'll generally take 1, possibly 2 rockets, and they're down, whereas the Red 4 ones can take a little bit more punishment because they're slightly better strengthed up. So in summary, these guys are not mega expensive. They're 100 points. You've got a whole range of vehicles to bring them in on. They're very versatile, and depending on what you bring them in on, they can be very fast at getting to a zone, especially at the start of a game, if you want to capture a zone near the front at the start of a game. So moving on now to the command helicopters. Now the command helicopters are very fast but very vulnerable to any anti-air unit, and they've all got a strength between about 4 and 6, and here's the Lynx AH-1CP with a strength of only 4. In my opinion, I'm not going to go over these in detail, helicopter commands are pretty much redundant in Wargame Red Dragon. As why would you bother getting a command chopper when you can spend 10 to 15 more points for an infantry command plus a useful chopper with armaments that you can also use during the game. Infantry carrying choppers are just as fast as command choppers and often have more strength points, but more importantly, command infantry choppers can drop off their command infantry in safety away from an enemy owned sector, behind enemy lines even, and can walk their way in, whereas a command chopper could never do this. It would have to fly all the way in. It's extremely vulnerable. So importantly, do not use command choppers unless you absolutely have to, for example in the solo campaign. So finally we're going to have a look at the command ships, and these are a little bit different than the land-based commands in that these units will definitely be engaging the enemy if you bring them into the battle map, because they are your front line of your naval warfare basically. They are pretty well armoured and they've got excellent weapons, and they're pretty good at defending themselves in certain circumstances as well. Now they can act as command units when you place them into a zone and they are still in that zone. Of course they do have to be on a deep blue part of the water on the battle maps because they are deep sea ships. Now the important thing about these is that you're able to defend them when they are placed in a zone, and there's two things you can do to defend them. Probably the most important one is to have air superiority above and behind your ship. You can do this by having air superiority fighters, or you can have anti-air units placed in front of your ship between you and the enemy aircraft, and basically it's just to discourage them throwing anti-ship warplanes and anti-ship helicopters at your ships. Also it's good to have them with good CIWS, or very good or excellent CIWS, and also to clearly get other ships around them that also have good CIWS and anti-air defences as well if you want to keep them protected. So yes, these commands will engage the enemy. They are your main sort of thrust for your naval forces, but you also, as with the other CVs, have to keep them protected by providing them especially with air cover. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I hope you got something out of it. Please do comment, like and subscribe, and especially comment your views. Tell me if you think you do something different, or you've got mention a specific unit maybe, and say, well, you like this unit because because I'm always learning. I'm always interested to know what other people are doing in this game as well. So yeah, comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.